on over, just say hello for a minute. Get to know Brad Gillingham and the Kaz.
All right, we're ready to go. So we have, like you just heard, we have two weight training legends with us today, Bill Kazmaier and Brad Gillingham. We're going to talk a little bit about both of them. So Bill has competed in the world's strongest man contest and won the title 3 times in a row, and was the world powerlifting champion super heavyweight. He worked as a strength and conditioning coach at the University of Auburn and was inducted into the WR-Barbell Hall of Fame in June of 2000. I'm going to give you guys a few of his best competition lifts here, so here we go. Squat, 925 pounds, that's the world record. Bench press, 661 pounds, that's the world record. Deadlift, 887 pounds, that's the world record. I think we have a little pattern here. Total in competition, 2,425 pounds, that's another world record. With Brad Gillingham, Brad is a super heavyweight world powerlifting champion with his best lifts: squat, 870, bench, 633, deadlift, 854, and a total in competition for 2,342 pounds. Bill and Brad will be presenting on how to increase your strength in various lifts by using specific techniques in program design and developing the champion mental focus. Guys?
Thanks so much. And we're going to squelch. I hate it when I squelch because I've got that low voice, you know, and when I squelch it kind of like, it even hurts my ears. Wonderful opportunity to be here for Dr. 𝙤𝙧𝙧𝙤𝙧 at the Swiss conference, and to be with an individual like Brad Gillingham. You know, when I look at one of the powerlifting guys, my lifting was from 25 years ago, and I've had so many experiences going through that. But one of the most enjoyable and incredible experiences is that when you go through your life, you see some guys that come along that are just something special. Maybe I was one of those special guys, but in critiquing the guys of today, and I look at a family like the Gillinghams, to see 3 brothers, Carl, Wayne, and Brad, I'm pretty in awe, because Carl is a physical specimen of 300 pounds with phenomenal strength and great fitness, and he's almost shredded for a strong man. He's really a great athlete. Wade is the kind of guy who's maybe never really reached his own potential, but when he takes things with his hands, he can literally crush them. And he's got a world-class grip. And Brad, of course, as you'll find out today, not only 2 times world powerlifting champion and one of the best of today, and you could almost look at him in some of the lists, we'll talk about it, as the best top 20 in the world ever. But I kind of like to think about Dad. And when I think about mine, I think of a man who was 5'8", 160 pounds. He was born at the turn of the century in 1905. Luckily in '53 he had me, he was 59 years old. So I'm happy to be here. But my mom was 5 foot tall. So I don't really know why I'm 6'2" and 3 1/4, but it just happened. And I'm sort of happy. Maybe it was the meat and potatoes and that sort of thing. Some sort of genetics fell into place. But when you look at Brad and his brothers, all 3, about the same size, and their dad. Well, Dad, why don't you tell us about Dad?
Yeah, can you hear me? One of the things we wanted to get into a little bit is motivation, and what motivates you to achieve the things that we all want to achieve in sports. I'd say just standing here next to Bill Kazmaier is pretty motivating. Does Bill Kazmaier look like a motivating person to you? To me, it does. I mean, I grew up watching Bill Kazmaier. You know, what more of a person can you look at if you've seen Bill on TV? Look at the fierceness in his eyes and the way he's gone about doing what he did in the past. You know, a lot of it came upstairs. A lot of mine came the same way. I come from a very competitive family. I grew up the son of Gail Gillingham, 5-time Pro Bowler, Green Bay Packers. He's got 2 Super Bowl rings. You know, his first instructor in the pros was Vince Lombardi. Can you imagine it was a little bit hard to grow up in that household? You know, Vince Lombardi, for everything my dad's indicated, had a real way of motivating people. And my dad had the same, but my dad, you know, I grew up watching my dad train in the summer. It helped affect the way me and my brothers have gone about things. You develop a champion-type mentality.
And I've got a great deal of respect for his father, although I have never really gotten to know him, but I know that he has raised his sons well to all become champions and have a great attitude. I think attitude is probably one of the most important things. As I grew up, I didn't get a good attitude because there was such a space between my dad and myself. When I was just 10 years old, of course, he's 69 years old, and there's not a lot of sports things going on, and I didn't have what Brad and his brothers have. But my dad did do one thing. There's two ways of looking at motivation, and I see them, both ends of the spectrum, as being positive and negative. And I've got a little boy, and he's 18, and I continually try to tell him he can't, and he says, "Dad, don't use that crap on me. You know, tell me I can, and be positive." So my dad used negative reinforcement. He pretty much said, "You can't, you won't, you don't have a chance, you're this, and you'll never be anything else but that." And so with that negative reinforcement, I really had to prove myself. And as I grew up, I tried to overcome all sorts of obstacles, and I found many obstacles in front of me as I was growing up, in school, around school, in sport, politics and sport, and all the things that we have to deal with as we're growing up. So I use those negative things to really infuriate me. Quite often in a competition around some of the strongest men, I would, just because I was an antagonist, I would try to get the guys in the show to start, it wouldn't matter what it was, I would get them picking at each other, I would pick at one or two, and the next thing you know, they'd all be arguing. And as they were, I would just sit down and pull that energy and try to bring it in and let them all argue while I was focusing on what I was really getting ready to do, which was an event. But, Brad, how do you bring your best out for motivating yourself for training and competition and the rest?
Yeah, I think mine's real similar to Bill's. It's kind of an odd thing, but really looking at some negativity. I mean, some obstacles you want to overcome, or sometimes it's been, for me, injuries. Before I ever started powerlifting, when I was 20 years old, I was out acting like a genius at about 3:34 in the morning and ended up with my knee turned back around facing this direction towards my head. I had 6 hours of surgery on that knee. At the time, they hadn't developed the anterior cruciate replacement type surgery where they used part of your patella tendon. So they did kind of a beef up job on that. I broke my medial collateral in 5 places, did some meniscus damage, and tore a chunk of bone from the bottom of my kneecap about the size of a dime. So I was really told when they fixed that knee, my doctor said, "Well, you'll walk right again, but you know, forget the rest of this stuff." Well, I used that as a big motivation. When I was there 20 years old and had that knee, I was going to show them that they were all wrong. You know, I was still going to have a good athletic career despite the injuries. So early on, that was a big motivation to me, was overcoming that obstacle of tearing that knee up, which was resulted from a dumb event, not an on-the-field type injury.
So, Brad, I'm a little bit curious. So, when you say Vince Lombardi was one of these, was Dad one of these, and was it about a size 14? And did it hurt? And did you do what he said? And I'm kind of curious about that because.
Yeah, I grew up in my household. It was definitely size 13 and a half, and yeah, it was just a way of growing up, and you listen to things. Heck, I'm 38 years old right now, and if the old man tells me something to do, I think pretty careful about it and usually listen. So.
Well, at 335 pounds and at about your best, isn't Dad about your weight or more, and almost at his best?
Yeah, we were over in the Ukraine in '98 at the IPF World Championships, and in powerlifting, you've got something called a super suit that you squat in, and you got these straps that have to be lifted up above your shoulders, and then if you can kind of shake the athlete in there a little bit, the suit fits better, and it allows you to squat more.
So usually 2 or 3 guys come up from the side, start getting their fingers real down deep, and yank to drop the guy into his suit.
So my dad, he's standing behind me, and the Ukrainian national team is all standing there. They're watching this. And earlier, before my first attempt, he he had grabbed a hold of the back of my straps and he got me up on my toes and my feet left the ground a little bit. And so when it come time for the next attempt, they all took notice and they're watching this. And he grabbed a hold of me and had me about 6 inches off the ground. And that was 98, so he was 55 years old then, and I weighed about 310, 315.
That's pretty incredible. You know, I like to go back in my history. I get a chance to talk to a bunch of youth quite often, and I take that opportunity to try to change their lives. But I tell them about a story when I was 10 years old, and there I am, a problem kid, can't hardly spell, really just afraid to get up in class in a spelling bee and say the word because I'm so shy, and I'm really having a lot of problems socially. And at 10, I sneak into the gym one night because I hear this wonderful clanging, and these weights are rattling, and it's the girls' locker room, and I knock on the door, and my history teacher's in there, and he's lifting his weights. This is 1963. And he opens the door and says, "Bill, you can come in, but be quiet," because he knows I'm kind of a problem child. And so I sit down and I watch him, and as he's finishing his 200 pounds overhead, which he weighed about 200 pounds, and now this is a guy at 25 years old who could take a softball in the evening games, and you would hear it shred as it went over the far fence. He would hit every home run. Phenomenal young guy. And I thought, well, maybe he's going to teach me how to do this stuff. I said, "Can I lift my weight?" As he was putting his weights away, and I waited till the end. He said, "Sure, Bill, what do you weigh?" I said, 110 pounds. So he left that much on the bar, and I reached down and I picked it up to my shoulders, and I pressed it over my head, kind of glanced at it, and set it back down, and I waited. What seemed to be almost an eternity. What do you think the words out of this man's mouth might be? "I'm from a broken home. I'm really having problems." He could be my mentor. Does he put his hand on my shoulder and say, "Bill, good job. Let's teach you another lift"? The words out of his mouth that echo in my ears today are, "Bill, now you've got to leave. Don't come back." Another obstacle. Was it good that I had more negativity and I had to overcome those things as I moved forward through junior high school and had bad grades and then finally got a chance in sports? Or would it have been good if I would have been in a family of monsters like the Gillinghams with a motivator like their dad? You know, we all have our own things that seem to get us going and moving forward. It seems in our society that the reward system is probably far better than the negative, but so many of us, you know, on the outside, you look at a person and you think, oh, everything's going great. Well, you know, really on the inside, people are sometimes really a mess. And I know a lot of the people that come to this conference are the types that are the people a little bit like myself and a lot more than I am helping other people. Every chance I get, because of that man when I was 10 years old who pushed me away, I now try to get 5 or 6 kids and sit down and talk to them, 50 or 60 or 500 or 600, and I try to say things to them that's going to change and direct their lives. So I've turned that negative right back around into a positive. And when I'm off doing some strength feats and things, I tell kids what I think about to become a champion and how I have developed myself into a champion from that type of childhood and all the way through my sports experiences, and relate some of the stuff to them that I did to accomplish that.
Another item that talking to Dr. Kenny was wanting us to discuss is why did we do this, and why does everybody do what they do as far as athletics, and why did Bill Kazmaier lift the things he did, and why does Brad Gillingham lift the things he does? And, you know, I think a lot of it is you have to. Once you get into these type of athletic type things, it becomes part of your whole self. I mean, you know, I wouldn't know what to do on a daily basis if I wasn't thinking about training. You know, what I'm going to do as far as training that week. It kind of models your whole life. You know, what are you going to eat? When are you going to train? What meet do you have coming up? I know in 2001 or 2002, I had come off winning 2 world championships in a row. I won 2000 in Japan, and the next year I came back and won in Finland. And I was really looking forward to trying to be a 3-time winner at the Worlds. And in between, I had got invited to the Arnold Schwarzenegger Strongman Classic. Bill was part of one of the organizers and did the announcing for the event. Unfortunately, on the fourth event, which was an 850-pound-ish cart that we had to carry up a ramp, I ended up tearing my bicep off the distal connection to the radius. Boom, torn bicep. I had nationals for powerlifting 18 weeks later. All I could think about is I have to get to nationals 18 weeks later, or I'm not going to have a chance at three-peating at Worlds. And I did. I competed 18 weeks after having bicep surgery. It probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, but nobody was going to tell me otherwise. I mean, at first friends and people said, well, yeah, you can make it back. But then after I had the surgery, they said, you have to take this year off. And I just kept, inside I knew I was going to compete 18 weeks later.
That's a pretty phenomenal comeback. And how did you do at the competition?
I actually deadlifted 777 pounds 18 weeks after bicep reattachment. I got second place at nationals. Then I went on to Worlds in Slovakia. 8 months after surgery, I had my best total ever, 2303 at the time, 2303, and I deadlifted 854 pounds. So
I know I sure would if I tore the bicep off, and I've ripped one here or there, small tears where they didn't have to reattach them. It's so scary to actually straighten that arm out again and pull against that extra weight, that heavy weight. Going back in time, this saying about why we do it and how we do it and what's the motivation. I would have to say that everybody that has come to this conference, in some way or another, you think to yourself, you want to be outside of the ordinary. You don't want to just be an average person. You want to be maybe known for what you do, and you excel, and you want to be extraordinary. And when you see the things that Brad's doing today, and there's going to be a couple strongman events, demonstrations in a bit, the things that we did through our lives, we wanted to be extraordinary. And it's really just being outside of the ordinary. But I think you realize once you're good at something, you usually gravitate towards that. Realizing that I was a strong kid at 10 years old, and by the way, by the time I was in the early years of high school, I could take my body weight, which was 200, and as a senior, I could do it 10 times over my head on my way into college. As I first got to college, the first deadlift I ever did when they said this is the deadlift, you just bend down and pick it up. There was 315 on the bar, that was pretty easy. And then they loaded 405, 495, 585, threw the collars on. I did 600 pounds in the deadlift the first day I ever tried it. How did I do that? I did find a mentor as I was growing up. He paid me $3.75 an hour to help cut down trees. And when we did cut those trees down, I always had to drag the branches, and he said, you don't just drag a branch in each hand, you make one pile here and one pile here, you reach to the bottom, lift up, and now you charge up the hill and you drag both of these piles of brush. And all the stumps that he cut with the big saws, I had to roll up the hill, and when I couldn't put on the press and roll up the side of the truck and push into the truck, he would help me with. He had a two-man chainsaw that it was 18 horse with a 6-foot bar and a handle on the end. And I dug my heels in for us to flush cut stumps. And for 15 minutes in junior high school, I had both heels dug in, and I was pulling for all I was worth. So what did I figure out at that time? Exactly that position, to pull as hard as I could and get that stump flush cut. And hopefully he sharpened the chain enough that it was working pretty good, because it was so much work and I just wanted to get it over with. I pulled absolutely as hard as I could. So was I, because of my environment, was my life changed, and was I, sure I had gifts, but I was also conditioned through my environment. I think it's something that's pretty important when we talk about John Paul Sigmarsson and Magnus for Magnusson and the wonderful guys coming out of Iceland. Think of yourself growing up as a kid. Before you go to school in the morning, you hook up the horse and buggy and you shovel the shit out of the barn. The other doc said shit, so I can too. Onto the cart, now you take the horse out into the field and you unload the wagon and you fill it with rocks because there's field stones. You head back down towards the barn, you unload the rocks on the pile, unhook the horse and the buggy, and head to school. With a shower or without, I don't know. But that's the Icelandic kids. In the afternoon, you do the same thing again. Think about their conditioning and what their workload is and what their capacity for work is. When I would get into a gym, I would think, well, I've done enough at a certain point in period. I know the Icelandic guys that I competed against, when they're in the gym, they're so conditioned to that really hard work that they're at a big advantage. So, how was all that when you were growing up?
Well, mine was similar. My father grew up on a farm, and he always used to tell us that the time he was 5 or 6 years old, he used to, they didn't have automatic barn cleaners back then, so he'd clean the barn out every morning for school, how often it was. He'd like to say every morning, but it was probably once a week. And so he grew up in that real hard farm labor type industry, dairy farming. Well, when we were growing up, he was playing football. Now back in the late 60s, early 70s, there wasn't a lot of money in football. It's not like it is now, obviously. So we weren't a wealthy family, but we were doing all right, but we weren't by any means wealthy. But he wanted us to have some hard work, a good work ethic driven into us. So he decided about the time we were 5th, 6th grade that we were going to start burning wood at home rather than have an oil heat. So our job in the fall and in the summer every weekend was to get out of bed, go out and cut wood for 7 or 8 hours out on the weekend, and then chop it during the week. And that was his method of trying to drive that work ethic into us. And I think that relates a lot to what Bill is talking about. A lot of successful strength athletes, successful athletes of any kind have to have some type of work ethic, as part of their whole makeup.
Yeah, I think when you're training, we all have thresholds, right? No matter what it might be, running, lifting, and all the rest that we might do. But what is that threshold, and what is your capacity? And when you get a message in your brain that says, okay, you've done enough, does that mean you set it down or you stop running, walking? Is it over? I try to condition myself. Hey! I don't want to see any more of that. I'm telling a really good story here. It's all about capacity for work. Are we having fun at the Swiss conference or what? Okay, how did I pull these big trucks, lift all these weights, come back from injury like Brad, tear things off, just keep on going, and act like a madman and go through the competitions and win? How did I condition myself to do that? I set those thresholds pretty high. I would go in a stadium with weights strapped around my waist and ankle weights. I even put on lace weights and ankle weights. I was really anal about it. And dumbbells. And I'd do sprints up the Coliseum stairs. After a set of 5, I'd get my heart rate 25 beats in 10 seconds. Another set of 5 would be 30. Another set of 5 would be 35. My highest I went was 41 beats in 10 seconds, 246. Is that a little fibrillation, or is the heart really pumping? But I tried to create a situation where I was really, in every workout and every competition, I was a little bit like a wounded animal, if you can picture that. One that's in the corner, and it's either fight or flight. You either do or die. And I tried to create that sense of urgency, the ultimate of every single thing that I did in competition, but also in training. So imagine, how do you set that up? And I want to hear from Brad how he set this up and how he's doing it now. Because I would go into the gym, and we'd do these goofy squats. High bar squats, narrow stance, non-lockout. So we'd drop all the way to the bottom, and we'd come shooting up about 2/3 of the way, and then we'd drop in again. Just with 650 for 15, 3 sets, no big deal. But it burned so much. At about 10, you literally had to finally lock your knees, and you're dying, but I don't know, you push, 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 push. And why and how, it's just your capacity for work. I guess it's like they say in our brain capacity, we utilize 10. Some of those docs utilize 12 or 13. I'm a little lower than the 10. But the point is, physically and how much you can do, it depends on your conditioning and what your expectations are, how much you really do want it. And I know Brad wants to be world champion again, and he's training at his very best right now. I'd like to know how he's driving himself to do his best in the gym every day.
Bill, we were talking briefly before we came up here about some of Bill's training in the past. I mean, and it was so crazy and such tough training that it makes me feel like I'm not doing nearly enough at times. But I have a very tough workout I do, and basically most of my strength comes from a 5 sets of 5 squat program that I developed. I try to do these 5 sets of 5 within about 20 to 25 minutes. I do the 5 sets of 5 with no belt and no knee wraps or no supportive suit. Sometimes I put a pair of Ray-Ban knee sleeves on. And I worked up to last week. I went 5 sets of 5 with 605 pounds, or 275 kilos. That was done in about 20-25 minutes. That's actually the best I've ever done. And that type of grueling workout when you do it in a short amount of time, it fatigues such a back fatigue and muscle fatigue that it really helps to build the whole base for your training. It makes you stronger. When you're trying to fight out a 850-pound deadlift, when you've had your whole basis of training on this raw, no gear, heavy multiple sets of 5, it really builds capacity in your body to work. Because when you do a 5x5 type workout, it ruins about 3 or 4 days of your life afterwards. You don't get off the couch very easy.
You know, the type of training that I think we're talking about being your ultimate in strength, I often have thought that the most important component within the workout and all the heavy sets is that rest period. And you know, with squats and deadlifts, sometimes that's as much as 5, 8, 10 minutes between sets. You know, most training routines are probably, bodybuilders are taking a minute or 45 seconds or a minute and a half or 2 at the most. And we're doing these ultimate sets where we're just literally flat on our back. The back's cramping, so you're doing abdominal crunches to try to put your trunk back into balance before you go and do another set. But that variable is one that if you can just shave off 30 seconds at a time, your conditioning is so much better. And then if you take a jump and you go back to the 10-minute rest, it's pretty incredible how you can jump literally 50 pounds. I would start doing things in the squat and deadlift around 650 or 700 pounds. By the end of a cycle, 8 or 10 weeks later, I'd be up over 900 pounds, taking about 30, 40 pounds a week in my jumps. The bench press was a little bit different, where we take 25 pounds every week and keep moving forward. What we did when we tried to whenever we tried to set our records, we would simply take a calculator, and I wasn't really good with math, so the calculator worked great with me. I started the meet that I wanted to go to 12 weeks ahead, and I would put in the numbers, and I'd just keep counting backwards from there. And then knowing where I could start, I would divide the jumps I'd have to make to get to where I wanted to be. And I was pretty realistic about that goal setting. It was important every workout to do the lifts and do the work, and to work as hard and fast as I could. One of the things that there was a delivery on today about IV vitamins and amino acids and that sort of thing. I don't want to say I was ahead of the group, but in 1980, we would run 2 bags of saline dextrose and 500 grams of Protovid after workouts twice a week. And I believe 500 grams IV, probably a little more than you could use, considering in oral ingestion, 30 or 40 grams at a meal is enough. I might have been overdoing it, but it really helped me recover to do those kind of things with my body.
The question was on how many days do I do the type of workout I was doing. I set up about a 16-week program. There's four 4-week cycles within that 16 weeks. So it's up and down, up and down, up and down. And the heavy sets are 1 day a week. And then I do a lighter squat workout, say on Monday as part of my deadlift training. But that 5x5, that 600, that was my peak set for the training program. Now I've got 2 weeks to go, and then I go to South Africa for Worlds. So this week I went light. Next week I put on my knee wraps, my suit. I do a couple heavy singles. Then I rest up, and I get on the airplane and go to Worlds. But for me, that 5x5, that's a once a week deal. And that might actually overtrain me for about 2 weeks. I don't feel real good for a couple of weeks. But when I do that light week the next week, then it kind of recharges my system.
Brad has criticized my training from the past of more than 20 years ago, and said, in a constructive way, and said that I didn't have the benefit of the knowledge of today, because my training was more of 10s and 15s about 10 weeks out, and then all 10s, and then 8s and 10s, and then 5s and 8s, and then 3s and 6s, until I got to the meet. But when I went through the 5.5s, and I thought that's a magical number, but when I did 5.5s, that creates the greatest amount of size and power from what I found from my training. But then it was 4 5s, 3 5s, 3 3s, 2 3s, 2 doubles, and go to the meet. But off those 2 doubles, I could jump another 40 pounds. And if you're doing 8 1/4, 840 in the deadlift, that means you got something real close to a world record. But, something I did that I was really kind of maybe ignorant. 7-week period, 49 days. Instead of taking a day rest every week, training 6 or taking 1 off, I'd skip the off day. So I'd go 1 extra workout for bench and deadlift squat in that cycle of 7 weeks, which if you add up 40, and 20 for your jumps, that's another 100 pounds in the total. And the problem with that is that the day that I'm doing heavy squats, I'm doing rack deadlifts. really pounding on the low back. And then the day that I'm doing heavy squats, I start with high bar squat. I'm doing heavy deadlifts. I start with high bar squats, fatigue the quads, and then really brutalize the low back. But that was only 2 days after heavy squatting. 2 days, 2 days, 2 days, not enough rest. I was always in a constant state of overtraining, and maybe that's why I had some of the problems blowing out muscles, bellies, and stuff like that when I was lifting.
Bill's kid, when he said that, I was criticizing him. Would you criticize this man? But I think, Bill came from an era, where we were still learning about training and how often a person could train and how to set up workouts. And, there's been more science into it over the years. Possibly learning that you need to have more of those rest days. You need to have a little more time off. You might, rather than be able to just keep increasing that weight and increasing it for 12 or 16 weeks, maybe you need to have a little bit of increase it, start back over and rest, bring it back again, and do more of a cycling type workout. So, I think that aspect has changed. A lot of the things that Bill's describing as far as his training, I do the same thing. Rack deadlifts, but my rack deadlifts, that might be my light week then. I'm not going to do sets of 15 with 650 before I do a rack deadlift. But, a lot of that going heavy, doing partial rack type stuff, heavy squat movements, that's the basis of building your strength.
What do you say we brush over the 3 lifts? How many people are here interested in the squat, deadlift, and bench press? Anybody, everybody? If we just brush over those real quick, and I'll give Brad or you guys a quick seminar of what I would do with his bench press to make it CAS efficient, and from the past to the present. And it's as simple as this. I'll take a picture of his body and his bench press. Out of that picture, I'll punch it into a puzzle. That puzzle will have 8 pieces. I don't have a lot of those pieces anymore. I got divots here and there from the iron snake that's taking chunks. But there's low pec, middle pec, upper pec, front deltoid, maybe inner outer tricep, latissimus, which really comes into play, and maybe a little bit of brachialis. I don't know if that's 7 or 9, it doesn't matter. But of those pieces in the puzzle, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And each of those components, each of those muscles I've described, have a specific role in the bench press. We know that when our elbows are tucked, low pec is coming off the bottom. We know that our inner tricep's working. If our elbow is close enough to our body, we know that we're scrubbing our tricep against our lat as we're coming down in the bench. So as we're looking at all that and we're pushing the bar up, we realize that if we push with our lower pec and lock it out straight, that's not mechanically really efficient. So if I take a position right about Brad's eyes and I say, bring it down to your chest, push off, now let your elbows flare and slide it up towards your eyes. Think of this stage we're on. If we didn't have the steps and I wanted to move a heavy package up here and Brad wasn't here to lift it, I'd slide it up a ramp. Well, rather than doing a rep straight out and straight back, you push here and slide. So if a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and we know that when Brad shoves it off his chest, he gets it about 2/3 of the way through, coming off the chest, but the weight's got to transfer, low pec, middle pec, to upper pec. Well, if he knows if he gets it through that point, he can finally lock it out. Well, how are we going to fix that part of the unit? We're going to take this piece out of the puzzle, we're going to do a grip maybe 1 inch wider, higher on the chest, and fill in that groove at the top, so then it becomes 1, 2, 3 without a hesitation.
Now, Bill, are you talking training as in addition to your training that we would do some of those type of benches?
Right. After the regular workout, a little high on the chest. If you have a hard time starting off the chest, we always did low on the chest. When we say wide grip and narrow grip, we don't mean that. We mean 1 finger. Things that are really applicable to the bench press. Oftentimes people ask me, well, should I do a lot of inclines to get that upper chest and that front deltoid and all your pec? I would say no, because incline doesn't have anything to do with regular bench pressing. It's way too far away from doing the bench press. But 1 finger moved around will have a lot to do with it. We even got to the point where where you hold the bar on the hand had a lot to do with the hands were your steering wheel. As you came down off, you come to the chest and shoved up. When we wanted to get the elbows to flare, we just let the hands slide a little bit and the elbow went flying out. But to finish up my seminar on bench press, I simply, and anybody who's heard me speak about this, in the mind, I created a situation where my arms were like a hydraulic cylinder. They were wrapped with a nice coil spring. And as the bar came off the bench, 3 guys lifted it. I felt nothing. I still felt nothing, and I was getting ready. And about the time we got here, those springs were cocked, the hydraulic cylinders were fully pressurized, and it was boom! And you know, if you lift slow, you'll always be slow. Boom! If you lift fast and as hard as you can, and you believe that you have jackhammers for arms, then you do, and that's how you'll move weight. So anytime I ever lifted weight, it was just as hard and fast as I could, as many times as I could. In some of these bench press routines, Brad talks about 5.5s. I did my 5.5s on the bench at 550. I did a down set that same day, 4 1/4 for 30 reps. So I took it like this. Maybe it didn't move that fast, but I actually thought it did. And that was my kind of training. I hope that helps a little bit. I know it's kind of like world-class bench pressing, but you should be able to get some of that out of it. You know, it's only certain pieces that you're using. You're developing a technique with where your elbows are going, and you just never say die.
How do you feel your shoulders played into that?
I use a lot of deltoid. So, but to work the deltoids, you know, the deltoid's such a short muscle. We only worked it from here to here, and did a ton of front raises and dumbbell presses. So I actually felt like when I was bench pressing, as I shoved, I was really kind of doing a front raise at the same time.
I think should I talk a little about deadlifting?
Sure.
Deadlifting training, which is really my best event. I'm tall, I'm almost 6'5", so squatting is a tougher event for me. Benching's tougher. I'm a pretty good bencher. The squat's been coming around, but the deadlift has always been my best event. I think a big part of my deadlift, the reason it's so good, is I'm so tall, and this definitely is not anatomically correct position to squat in, but since the first day I tried squatting, my squats have looked like this. Anybody know what's wrong with that squat?
Everything.
Everything. And the reason my squats look like that is I'm almost 6'5", so I mean I fold over like you know, like I shouldn't be doing. But over the years, as I approach my my competition type squats, I've gotten much better where I can be in a more more of an upright type position. But when you train like that and you do a 5x5 type workout with 605 pounds, and after you fatigue, you're bending over like I was showing you, you don't need to do good mornings because you're getting all of your back type work and your erector muscles in through squatting. So that's been a big factor that's always helped my deadlift. It might make my back ache a little bit, and for the chiropractors in the crowd, you're probably wondering, what is that guy doing? But in the long run, it's really built those type of core muscles. The other aspect I do on deadlifting is I do a lot of rack type pulls, partial pulls.
From where?
I start out about 8 weeks out.
That's why I grabbed this one, Brad.
The first week on the pulls
From the side.
is above the knees. I pulled over 1,000 pounds from there on many of these. The next week I go down to a pull from the floor. Now typically I don't pull a lot of reps in the dead because I'm getting all that volume in from that 5x5 squat workout. I don't need to do a lot of reps. The next week I come down to just below the knees. This time in my training I pull 975 in that position. I don't use straps, I just use a bigger grip. The following week, I get down to about 8 inches off the floor. And then the last week, I decide if I really need to go a little lower, or should I come back up above the knee again. Now that's not real scientific, but if I feel like I need to go lower, I'll do it, otherwise I come back up. So when I go into a meet, I have a lot of confidence. My back's strong from doing these 5x5s. I know I've pulled over 1,000 pounds here. I've done over 975 pounds from here. I just got to try to find a way to get the weight moving so I get up to that level.
And it looks to me like all that squatting that he's doing is going to keep him in a really nice position at the bottom so he can get the weight to here. And as soon as he does, he's going to be able to lock it out. But what I've found in the deadlift a great deal is that if you can't maintain that same squat position all the way through the lift, you let the head and shoulders go forward, the bar's going to be out front, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So you really do have to keep a really nice style, hips down, head up, shoulders back. And by the way, if we even brushed on any of these outfits that the guys are wearing today that pull the shoulders back and are real tight from the shoulders to the hips. We call it an erector shirt. When you're utilizing those kind of devices, it just makes your body fit into a really nice position, so you're allowed to pull and make mistakes and still utilize your power to just come right up. But Brad's training seems pretty sound in that aspect.
The other oddball thing I have with my deadlift is I use a double overhand hook grip, which I started doing before I had the arm injuries, but it's really helped me because of the arm injuries. So both of my hands are in the pronated position. So the hook like Olympic lifting. Typically, a lot of your arm injuries from deadlifting are in the supinated hand. Start curling the bar as it gets heavy. So I've avoided that by using both of them overhand. It's allowed me to hold on to a lot more weight. It gives a lot more even pull to the bar.
I'm not so sure if it's not because Brad's had both biceps pulled off that he decided, I think I'll maybe go overhand and protect them both. I'm just curious, as I say about this technique, coming off the floor, I used to try to drive my feet through the floor, definitely staying on my toes, keep my hips down, throw my head and shoulders back, and come up as fast as I could. I actually studied the Olympic lifters and the famous pictures of Ringert and Rachmaninoff and Pizarenko, those beautiful wall shots that show them here, 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 here in each segment, and I tried to lift like that. But then I also tried to use the same speed that they used. I strapped into the bar and pulled just as hard as I could. I never realized I had a grip problem until I hit close to 900 and I couldn't use the straps and the bar came out of my hand. That was a little bit of a problem, but really pulling as hard as I could seemed to make me a much better deadlifter. Do you pull as hard as you can, or do you just, when I see you moving it, it's 850 and it's still just coming right up, but are you pulling easy or pulling hard? Or?
It's kind of, I do try to use some speed, but I try to do that Olympic style too, to build that up. I started watching these Ukrainian and Russian powerlifters. They all came out of their Olympic program, and they all lifted like this. Arch back, you're going to do a clean or a snatch. So I started doing RDLs, a lot of Romanian techniques. That's really strictened up that position, so I try to lock in. I tuck in, arch my back, and then I pull as hard as I can. The question if I ever pulled solo, I've tried it a couple times. When I've warmed up, I felt like this is the way to do it. But as soon as I've gotten heavy, it seemed to be good for me.
Use that mic. Hey, how about we got 10 more minutes left. They're going to booze off the stage for another great presentation and a smashing day here at Swiss. But how about if we go to a little bit of question and answer, because I haven't really talked much about strongman, which is coming up next. Brad has done strongman, crossed over, and I have to kind of pat him on the back as a senior lifter that he's made the crossover just by stepping over into the competition and doing it. That's what I was asked to do 25 years ago, and I didn't seem to have a problem with it. Nowadays, you have to train a lot with the strongman events in order to be ready with them. You have to be event savvy, and if you're not, it can hurt you. Brad is really not, because he hasn't trained, but when he jumps into it, he does extremely well. But you guys have all your other interests, and I'm sorry if we've gone off into directions that maybe you're not so interested in, but right here, right now is your opportunity to talk to one of the strongest guys walking and one of the oldest strong guys walking and ask your questions. And I had some really great ones before, so we got about 8 minutes, 7 minutes. What's yours? How would I what? Oh, core strength. They said they high.
Core strength. A lot of our type of core strength has come from our lifting heavy. We're shaking our belts off, and that's how we're building our core. But I would suggest a lot of ab work, doing that, getting your abs strong. And I think for all age brackets, lifting squats and deadlifts to a certain degree, as long as you're within your range of motion, so you're not hurting your joint, is going to be a good thing for you.
He had mentioned the ball and using some of that for core strength. Not bad for the general populace. How did we do it? Hyperextensions on a 45, but then right elbow up, left elbow up, really working it a little, flipping over and doing a rotary twisting motion, 50-pound plate, 75-pound plate, maybe a set of 20-pound dumbbells, reaching up and doing that, maybe 150 or 200 on one side, doing this. So that's how we as powerlifters, and that's how I learned to get a real strong core. But surely, when you're pushing against that belt and lifting really hard weights, your core is just going to come up. It's really not the weak link. It's the low back that's usually the weak link. And when you have problems with the low back, we realize that it's that balance. And if the abs are stronger, we do a ton of abs. Your question, we're going to move quick. His question is, how do you get the best deadlift gripping strength? I can only say that in any kind of gripping strength, if you did something like a fishing pole with a weight on a bar, a ski pole behind you, thumb to the right, rolling upward, thumb to the left, rolling up that way, taking bars and squeezing them, lowering the bottom one and bringing the top one up, and doing this forward and back. I don't know if there's anything else, it's just doing all those types of exercises for grip. Brad comes from a grip specialist family where his brother is unbelievable at it. What would you say for gaining grip strength?
Yeah, I agree with what Bill said. I think he covered most of it. Working your grip, not wearing straps in training. Power cleans are great. They seem to really work your grip. And just repetitively doing these type of things that Bill mentioned.
What's your question? My greatest that I've seen? Oh, I don't know. My greatest thing in sports is to have read the book as I was growing up of Jim Thorpe, the Carlisle Indian. Well, my dad came from the Pennsylvania area, but he moved to Milwaukee when he had me. And he told me that Jim Thorpe was gone, and he really wasn't. So I read the book as a child, and I saw a guy who was a decathlete and pentathlete, and he was bigger and stronger and faster than everybody, and that's what I wanted to be like. And to me, he's the greatest sports hero of the 20th century, and I don't know about boxing and all that. Muhammad was awesome, but what's your greatest? Can I say what I think my second greatest is? That his dad, is it in Ohio, at the Hall of Fame, where they took the bronze, the Packer Hall of Fame. I mean, it's things like that must move him. But there's so many great athletic experiences, and anyone that I've ever had, if I could just share them with somebody, and here I think is one of the most incredible things in our life is that if it means something to you that I did, and you share it with me, all of a sudden it's something. But if some girls don't really care, it's a nothing event. I could say I lifted 1,000,000 pounds. She'd go, so what? That's a guy thing. So it's got to be important to the people around you, and if it is, and you're respected for it, then it means more. And when you can share it with others as to how you got there and some of the things along the way, I think that then becomes a great sports event. Is if you can relate it to other people in a way where they can maybe get something from it, so it doesn't die. Sorry, Brad.
No, I agree with Bill. I think basically you do things for yourself. If it's running a 5K or going to powerlifting competition or strongman or what have you have to do it for yourself. So if you don't enjoy it for yourself, that's the main thing. That's the driving force.
Anybody else? I mean, this is your chance. We may not be back next year. We might skip every other year again.
I just squatted heavy on Friday, so I hope I don't break something here.
He's going to show you how low he goes in the squat. Probably rock bottom. And in the IPF, they require you to go below parallel. A lot of the guys in the lifting, WPO, they maybe go this high. Well, in IPF, I believe you go like that low. So there's quite a difference in the lifting style and the uniforms that are worn and all the rest.
I eat about 6,000 to 8,000 calories a day. This time of the year, I'm trying my hardest to eat as much as I can. I got about a 20-hour flight to get to Africa. I need to put some belly on because I'm going to lose 10 pounds on the trip.
Yeah, food's always been a little bit important to me. At 50 years old, I still weigh 320, 30 pounds. And last night's dinner was a piece of fish and 2 steaks. I knew that I wouldn't have much breakfast, so... but my favorite eating things are when I ate 1,000 goldfish. I felt like I needed some iodine and a few things. And I was actually competing at a pet store for their grand opening, and up against kids who were eating 5 and 6, one at a time, and I was eating 100 at a time. because I could, you know.
How did you feel the next day, Bill?
Oh, it was 2 hours after when they all came up that I was hurting. But real quick, second lifting record down the throat, 50 pieces of chicken at one meal. My training partner ate 40, so I beat him with 50. I don't know why. Here's the problem with that situation. It was right after the workout. Well, what do we know about the ingestion of protein to the bloodstream? We know that beef and pork take about 4 hours. Chicken and fish, 2.5 hours. Milk and egg, 1.5 hours. Powdered protein, about an hour. Amino acid drinks and tablets, about 30 minutes. Well, if I ate 50 pieces of chicken 45 minutes after my workout, and it was in my bloodstream 2.5 hours later, did I miss the window of opportunity that closes between 60 and 90 minutes after muscular exertion? So where did it all go? Gone. Little did I know, no one told us that in the 70s and 80s, but now we realize it. And that's the kind of information I try to tell young kids when they're about to go off and train. When do you take your nutrients and how much can you actually use? 1 or 2 more questions and then our time is up until they yank us. You guys ready over there? They're next, right? What was your question? I'm sorry.
What's the worst injury you've had in a competition?
Oh, shit. Oh, I've had so many injuries. I mean, imagine coming up with like, I don't know, 850, down, adductor, something down in here goes. So you just wrap it up, but you make it up. And you go heavier for the next rep, 9.25, down, the other one goes. Oh, shoot. The next event is deadlift. Well, now what am I going to do? 300 pounds for the warm-up. Can't move it. My chiropractor says, okay, here's what we're going to do, Bill. We're going to get in there with our thumbs, and we're going to get it all to relax. And you're going to leave your legs straight. And you're just going to go like this. The 600 opener was a bear. And then it was 7, then it was 8, then it was 9. And then it was 9, 25, 50, 75, 1,000. There's only me and Hackett left. At 1,055, they wanted to go by 5s. Both my whatevers were just ripped. And I'm going, yeah! Ernie Hackett's about this tall going, whoop. So, worst, I think that was more of an injury and an insult at the same time. But when the pectoral came off in the bar bend, and the next lift was squat, and I had to rotate it backward and downward, and I couldn't even get inside the rack, I was just screaming. But after having to listen all week that Dave Waddington had the world's strongest legs, when I beat him by about 40 pounds, I stepped out from under the rack, and you might have saw my wife rushed me. I said, these are the world's strongest legs. So I guess as many times after an injury, you know, it's how you live your life and how you react. The measure of a man is not the size of his chest, shoulders, and arms. It's really his heart. It's how he treats people around him. It's how he serves his Lord. It's how he acts on his worst day. I mean, on your best day and everything's happening and you just had Christmas, you can be a great guy. But it's when times are tough, how do you react? To me, that's the measure of a man and how you evaluate him. I hope that gives you a little insight on us guys. Thanks so much. Hey, enjoy the Swiss conference and the rest of it. And please, I got to tell you one real quick thing. I'm the Johnny Appleseed of strength and fitness wherever I go, and I talk to as many people as I can. I would only challenge each and every one of you that wherever you go for the next 6 months and year, you tell people about what you saw, what you did here, what you experienced, and just tell them and pump them up and get them here and get them involved so that this event grows, because to me it's the most awesome products, the most awesome docs and people, and just the people who come to see this and work within it are ones who just want to take it home and share it with others. It's truly a phenomenal event. Thank you, Doc.
A big thank you to both of these weight training legends, Bill Kazmaier and Brad Gillingham.